Hey, and we're live. And hello to all you teachers out there, kids out there that are doing remote learning. You're not in school. I'm not in school. Today we have a special guest, someone I met over the last 5 or 6 years. I would visit a school district down in Delaware. And every year that I go down there, there's this guy, Antonio Sacre. Did I say it right?
You did, yes.
And over the years, maybe the first year I didn't really say hi to him. Maybe the second year I talked to him a little. By the third year, we're just like, we're really going at it. So I thought I got to get Antonio on the show. So we're doing a little remote learning. Here we go. Antonio, by the way, where are you right now? Where are you sitting? What city?
I'm sitting in Los Angeles, California, in my bedroom with the door closed because my kids are supposed to be remote learning at the kitchen table. And then I have two cats on the other side. You might hear those. And my wife for sure is going to come in and have to get something from the room or whatever. But that's where I am right now.
Well, that's true. I'm in my room too, in Boston, Massachusetts. So I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. Actually, I'm in South Boston, Southie. He's in LA. Isn't this unbelievable? We
Unbelievable.
can't be in schools, but we can all talk together. It's great.
Yeah, it is
So
great.
tell us about yourself.
Well, the one thing is that I was born in Boston. I was born right in the city of Boston. That's where my mother's from. She's Irish, Catholic American. They all of them now live in Cohasset and Weymouth and Dorchester. And my brother lives up the Cape. Is that right? Yeah.
Right next to Cohasset.
Cohasset is where my grandmother would take me, and we would swim that little cove there, cold water and horseshoe crabs, and then my brother lives on the Cape now, so that's feels like part of my heart. But my dad is from Cuba, from Miami. Well, he was from Havana, Cuba, and he moved to Miami. But some random way he met my mom in Boston, and we ended up settling in Delaware. So when I got invited to that author festival in Delaware,
I see why you were in Delaware.
That's right. I couldn't wait. And the first time I met you, I of course, knew your books, and my kid was probably 3 or 4 years old, and I'm like, oh, I got to get these books. And I pulled out my little, the last $7 I had, because I only sold one book that day. And you're like, oh, no, I'm not going to take your money. I'm like, no, I know you got to, no, you said, I made him money. And he's like, take my books. You gave me like 50 books for my son. So I came home with almost all of the Who Would Win books and the alphabet books. And so I've been a huge fan of yours, both as a reader and just as a friend. And the Delaware Festival was huge for me, seeing you, and I loved going back to where I grew up, where I went to school in Delaware. But yeah, so then just been around now since then.
That's great. So how did you get your first book published?
I did come up as a storyteller. So I'm sort of the part of the oral tradition of people who, either share family stories or old folk tales and myths and legends. And I was a storyteller in Chicago. I went to graduate school at Northwestern University, and I discovered the world of storytelling, which is something I never grew up with. I didn't know about it. And in practicing that craft, I became one of the only, aside from Carmen, as a matter of fact, storytellers who was able to do it in Spanish and in English. And in Chicago, there's a lot of kids from Mexico and Puerto Rico. And so early in my career as a storyteller, when I didn't have that many stories and I wasn't that practiced yet, I was able to make a living because there was such a need for people who could do it in Spanish. So I was at a festival. I was invited to a festival not too far from Chicago in Wisconsin. And of course, I love festivals and love being there. And it was just a bunch of authors. There was Sandra Cisneros was there, and Francisco Alarcón and Juan Felipe Herrera, and all these people these books I loved and studied. And they're all talking about their next book. Oh, my next book is coming out, and my editor's saying this, and my publisher's saying that, and I'm just amazed. And then the conversation turns to me, the young kid in the room, like, say, Antonio, when is your next book coming out? And I said, I'm not an author. Like, well, how did you get here? I said, I thought this was a storytelling festival. So I got invited to an author festival without a book. And all of them said, well, you have to get your books published. Your stories are beautiful. And I said, well, how do you do that? And they all started laughing. They said, oh, it's very easy. It's very easy. You write a good book. You've got a good book. I'm like, oh, thanks. I got a good book. They said, you mail it out to a publisher. I'm like, oh, great. And then you wait for the no's, and you start counting no's, and they're like, ha, ha, ha. And then they all went around the room, and they all told me about the number of no's they heard before their first book. Juan Felipe had 30 no's, and Francisco had 10, and they went on and on. And they said, and when you get to 30 no's or 50 no's, you call us up, and we'll give you some advice. But don't call us before you get that many rejections. I said, okay.
Wow.
Took
That's
me a year
good
to get. It is good advice. When I got about 50 rejections, I called up Juan Felipe. I'm like, hey, I got 50 rejections. He says, okay. When you get 100, call me up and I'll help you out. The number kept going until finally 125 rejections later on, I had my first book come out. And this later on, I'll tell this story. So this is my very first book. I'm very proud of this book. It's called The Barking Mouse. It's illustrated by Alfredo Aguirre. He's from Mexico. And it's a book about the importance of speaking 2 languages. So this is a story that my grandmother, a version of it, my grandmother told me when I was younger. She heard it in Cuba. And then I began to tell it to kids. And then this is the first book that I had published. And then I had a number of other books come out I can talk about later on as well. Abrams Books for Young Readers published my next 2 books. One is called La Noche Buena, A Christmas Story, which is how Cubans celebrate Christmas Eve. And it's really just my family celebrating Christmas Eve. And then my favorite book and sort of my best-selling book is called A Mango in the Hand, a story told through Proverbs. And what's great about this book is the dichos, or the sayings that many families who speak Spanish grow up with. We have them in English and many other languages as well, but I collected my 10 favorite dichos, my 10 favorite sayings. Things like, you know, when you're a kid, you might hear them from your old people, you know, a stitch in time saves 9. Well, nowadays kids don't know what stitching is or even what that means, but these things existed, and I've collected them for my family in Spanish. And so that's been kind of it. And then the last book that I had come out was my first not picture book. It's called My Name is Cool, Stories from a Cuban Irish American Storyteller. One of my friends calls me a leprechauno, a mix of the cultures. And so this is a story of family stories and folk tales and myths. And this is kind of like my repertoire of stories that I tell when I visit schools. And then these are the books that I talk about when I talk about the writing process with kids. But really, I make a living as a storyteller, telling stories in schools and libraries and festivals and helping teachers use storytelling to teach writing and reading. And then out of that came the wonderful opportunity to be an author and to meet people like you and Carmen Didi and all these other amazing authors that continually help me and mentor me, both by what they're writing. And, you know, I don't know what Carmen's writing now because I know she's got a bunch of books, but her book, the Rooster Who Would Not Stay Quiet. I don't know if she talked about that, but that's a powerful book. And she's also super funny. So yeah, so that's a little bit of my process, my story.
Her new book is about a wombat in Australia during the fires.
Oh.
And he builds a giant burrow, and all the other animals knock on the door and want to come in because there's a fire.
Oh.
So she saw the fires in Australia,
Yeah.
and then she, you know, so I guess she did research and found out, I don't know, some of these animals that build burrows let 400 different species in. Some crazy. I don't remember if the wombat was like that. I might be mixing my story up with a turtle somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's
So that's
interesting.
cool.
Well, Carmen, you know, Carmen is obviously, she's from Cuba too. I love her story that she settled in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's, you know, that mix of the cultures that she has. But I was just thinking, it totally makes sense that she would write a story about a house that, you know, a borough that accepts all different kinds of people. You know, my grandmother's house was just constantly full. You know, she lived with 3 generations in her house. It was her and her sisters, and then her sister's daughter, and then my brother. So the 3 generations in the house until she was pretty old. And there was always room in that house. You know, we would have 30 people at the table, and it was a small house in Little Havana in Miami. So I imagine that's partly personal experience, Carmen, creating a story where a bunch of different people fit in a house.
Yeah. And my mother sort of tricked us. She let anyone in the neighborhood in our house. Like some of the parents wouldn't let us, they wouldn't let us go to their house. My mother would let everyone in, and she would feed everyone. And we didn't really know it. She was really keeping an eye on us. You know what I mean?
I'm shocked, Jerry.
Huh? She didn't have to worry about us. But I grew up in a house like that. I meet people today that are 60 years old, and they say, I just can't stop thinking about your house growing up, because there were so many kids, you know. Well, of course, that's what I tell people, kids everywhere.
Yeah.
71st cousins, all the kids in the neighborhood in my house. People say to me, you know, where'd you get your ideas for your books? And I don't know. I've just been around kids my whole life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can, what do you think we should do next? You want to tell some stories?
I would love to tell some stories. You know what? I want to do this. So when I first started telling stories, I just told stories in Spanish. And so much so that my material said the bilingual storyteller. And about 2 years into my career, people said, "Well, don't you tell stories in English?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I do. I also do stories in English." So now I'm just the storyteller, right?
By the
Well,
way,
about
first time, by the way, I'm gonna interrupt. The
yeah,
first
yeah,
time I saw, like, you and Carmen,
yeah,
and you guys would morph back and forth into Spanish and English,
yes,
I
yes.
I'm sitting there in the audience going, "Oh my god, how do they do it?" You know, like, I was like, "Holy cow, these guys," you know? I
It's
was, like, totally humbled, you know what I
it's
mean?
it's very funny. Part of it has to do with being in those houses because you'll often be in a house where someone doesn't speak Spanish and someone doesn't speak English. So just growing up, we had to figure out a way that everybody could understand us. And later on, that became kind of what we do because I look out at the audience and sometimes there's 40 or 50 kids who just came to this country, from different countries all over, but a lot of Spanish speaking countries. And so they have no idea what's going on up there. But then if you're only speaking Spanish, the other people don't understand. So how do you get somewhere in the middle? But
Yeah,
what happened was the last 10 years or so, there's been a really big push around the country for dual language instruction. And what that means is that you have two groups of kids in the classroom, one that speak English and the other that speak another language. Usually it's Spanish, but there's also Chinese and Russian and Armenian, other different languages. And so half the day you're only instructed in one language and the other half only in the other language. So you might learn math in Spanish one week and then math in English the next
by the
week, or
way, you know what's
science.
interesting? Are your books also in Spanish?
No, so this is the thing. Right now my books are in English with just a little bit of Spanish, and I
Yeah.
definitely one of the things I'm working on with my publishers is publishing them in Spanish, very
I was
specifically.
I was
All the
gonna
dual
play a joke on you and send you my Chinese, some of the books that I have in Chinese, and say, and I was gonna go, "Dear Antonio, here's my, Spanish books. Maybe you could read them during the show." But I didn't do it. I forgot
I
to
would
do it.
do
Hey,
I would do the best.
we do have someone who called in,
Oh yeah.
and it's a famous California author, Pam Munoz Ryan, and she says,
Oh my gosh.
"Hola, Antonio. What books are next?"
Oh my gosh. So Jared, you just know all the best people. I got like Aaron next door and George coming over here with his garbage can. But Pam, I love your books. Oh my gosh. Esperanza Rising is a book that I see in all the classes I go to. So one of the books that's coming out. Actually, I'm going to tell this story in English right now for you. It is growing up Cuban, I had a bunch of nicknames and I never knew what my real name was. My mom, as a matter of fact, when I was a child, my eyes were closed all the time, so she called me Mr. Magoo. Do you remember Mr. Magoo? And
Yeah.
then my dad said, "No, no, no, aquí hablamos español. Tú te llamas El Señor Magoo." So I had two nicknames, Mr. Magoo from my mom, El Señor Magoo from my dad. But my uncle said, "El Señor Magoo es demasiado largo. Vamos a decir El Gu." He said, "El Señor Magoo is too long. We're just going to call you El Gu." So before I had my real name, I had three nicknames. When I left Boston lying in hospital as a little
Yeah.
baby, my mom said, "Oh, we can't put Mr. Magoo, El Señor Magoo, El Gu on the birth certificate." So they called me Antonio from my dad, Bernardo from my dad's best friend from Cuba that never left the island, and Sacre.
Bernardo?
Bernardo. Yep.
Yeah.
So on my third day of life, I had six names, three real names, three nicknames. And Pam, the story I'm telling you right now is my next picture book. It comes out next at the end of in the winter, God willing. And so my grandmother called me the name that many Cuban grandmothers call the firstborn, Papito. So Papito, Jerry, you asked me the names that I get called. My dad always calls me Papito. My wife calls me Antonio. I also wanted to go by Tony because it's a
And
more
what does
American
Papito
sounding name.
mean?
Papito, well, it's funny. In Cuba, Papito is what the old people call the little babies. In Mexico, Papito is what the women call their boyfriends. Oh, Papito, come here, let's go out on a date. But in Cuba, it's Oye, Papito, ven acá. So it's an interesting thing. And it always kind of gets a laugh from my people from Mexico because when they hear my grandmother call me Papito, they think it's a
Yeah.
little odd. But in Cuba, they always go, ah, Papito. My cousin called me Coquito because my head was like a little coconut, so she called me Coquito. And then my uncle called me Futingo because I would fall all over the place. This is a name that you can't even find in the dictionary. It just means a jalopy, a jalopy. So as a kid, I had 10 names: Papito, Futingo, Coquito, Tony, Antonio Bernardo Sacre, Mr. Magoo, El Señor Magoo, El Goo. And on the first day of school, when the teacher was reading the roll call, she said, I don't remember the names. Hey, Michael Smith. Kid goes, here. John Witherell, here. Mary Johnson, here. And she said, Antonio Sacre. And everyone looked around the room, including me. She said, honey, I think you're Antonio Sacre. I said, I don't think that's my name, man. She said, well, what is your name? I said, well, it's Antonio Bernardo, Papito, Coquito, Futingo, Capitán de los Mosquitos, Mr. Magoo, Señor Magoo, El Goo Sacre. And because it was the 70s, Jerry, I got sent right to the principal's office. There was no discussion. There was no like, let's talk about this. And I'm there at the principal. He's like, what's the matter with you? And I'm looking at this huge man. He says, what's your name? You're going to make fun of me. He says, what is it? And I told him all my names. How my grandmother called me one thing and my uncle called me something else and my mom called me Mr. Magoo. Yeah. He started laughing. He said, that name is cool. And you tell the teacher that. So I went back to the classroom and she said, what is your name? I said, the principal says my name is cool. And she started laughing and she said, well, cool. Welcome to school. Yeah. And that story became the first story in this chapter book of stories.
I get it. My name is cool.
Yeah, but now they're turning it into a picture book. So the book is being illustrated. You know how long that takes. So so that's the next one that's coming out. And Pam, thank you so much. I can't wait to meet you as well. One of the things I love to do is to go into these classrooms and see the books that the teachers are teaching. And Jerry, your books are everywhere. And Pam, I was just in a 5th grade classroom and your books were there too. And so to see these, I love to put a face to the books. I love to tell the kids, all of these amazing books that you read are real people who think about things and they write things. And you know, part of what I want to do is I want to inspire the kids the way I was inspired to think, wait a minute, I can write books too. I didn't know that that was possible. You know, some of the books that come out seem so amazing. And, you know, you authors have worked so hard on them. One of the things I love about my books is they're really just about, one is just about my family meal, nicknames my grandparents called me, you know, sayings I grew up with. You know, these are things that we all have, that we all can write about. And my daughter's in 2nd grade, and these are the things she's writing about now too. So, yeah. It's
by the way, you've triggered a memory. You've triggered a memory to me of nicknames because most people don't know this. But my father, every summer, used to just buzz our heads. He would line up every kid in the neighborhood, and we'd all be on the back porch, and he would just buzz our heads, you know, because they didn't want to do showers. They didn't want to clean fish guts out of your hair. They didn't want to get seaweed, pull seaweed out, any of that stuff, right? So they buzzed every kid. So they used to call me Spiderhead. So that actually worked its way into the extinct alphabet book.
Oh my gosh. Spiderhead did?
Yeah, I said this creature's called, or whatever it was, maybe it should be called Spiderhead. Something like that. So I bet nobody out there knows that my nickname was Spiderhead. There you go. You triggered a story. That's not as many nicknames as you.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point of storytelling. You know, you tell a story. This is to talk to the teachers a little bit. When you're telling a story out loud, and I love reading books and I love showing the pictures, but I definitely love to encourage teachers to put the books down. When you tell a story out loud, there's a part of the brain that is activated that doesn't activate in any other way. And the kids hopefully are listening to an interesting story, but they're simultaneously writing their own stories. So as an example, Jerry was listening to my story and laughing, but he was thinking of this memory. And you painted the picture, Jerry. There's your dad and all the kids getting their haircuts and the nickname that came out of it. And so, you know, definitely whatever stories are sparked when you hear a story is engaging the writing process in the kids' minds. And I'd say all the way up to all the different levels for sure. So yeah,
You know what's interesting? When I give assemblies, I don't read my books. You know, I tell the story.
Yeah.
So I like I have the picture up on the slide.
Yeah.
But I for some reason I don't read them. I just tell the story. It must be more natural.
It does. It comes out more natural, and
It's
many
more natural to just tell the story and not like read the book word for word. You know what I mean?
for
So I
sure.
love that.
There's also the connection with the audience. And then also what I love, especially for the younger kids, especially if they know the books really well. I know your books at every library, every bookstore, what do you call it? A classroom that I go to, your books are dog-eared and they're all messed because people are just reading them. So when you
Yeah,
try to
just
tell a story,
leave them
very
old. Antonio, just leave them old. Wait till you're 67.
uh the kids love pointing out when you're not reading it correctly. Oh no, you missed a word, or that's not how it goes, or so that's kind of a
Mm.
fun way to do read alouds with kids when they love the books.
Well, that's great. Um, so why don't you tell us one of your stories?
Okay, so what I want to do is when I work with dual language kids, a lot of times I'm at the beginning of the school year and they're just learning the language. So the story that I almost always start with is The Barking Mouse. It's my first book because it deals with family. And so the first words that kids in kindergarten, first, second grade learn in Spanish when they're learning Spanish is about family. But also it's a joke that ties in. So I want to tell this story. Now I'm going to tell it entirely in Spanish. Now, for those of you who don't speak in Spanish, it talks about mama and papa. You probably know what they are. Hermano and hermana. You probably know what that is. And just in case you don't, mother, father, brother, and sister. And they are ratones. They are mice. The word for Spanish for mouse is raton, which sounds like rata, which is a rat. A family of rats is an interesting story. Ratatouille is a beautiful movie, but this is about a family of mice. Una vez había una familia de ratones, mamá ratón, papá ratón, hermano y hermana ratón. Y se fueron a comer. Y cuando estaban comiendo, papá estaba con mamá, mamá con papá, y dijeron, oye niños, tú tienes que jugar. Y los niños, el hermano y la hermana, se fueron, porque papá y mamá querían besar. ¡Ew! Y se fueron jugando. Y hermano y hermana ratón miró un gato. ¡Miau! Un gato. ¡Ah! Un gato. Hermana dijo, yo no tengo miedo del gato. Hola gato. Pero el gato quería comer los ratones. Y los dos se fueron corriendo a ver mamá y papá. Pero mamá y papá estuvieron besando. Mamá, papá, el gato va a comernos. Papá dijo, yo no tengo miedo del gato, yo soy papá. Pero cuando él miró el gato, él dijo, mamá, y dio la vuelta. Y los hermanos también. Ahí estuvo mamá, la familia y el gato. Mamá tenía mucho miedo, pero miró a los ojos del gato y con el valor que una mamá tiene para su familia, empezó a ladrar como un perro loco. Y el gato salió. Mamá no podía creerlo. Hermano dijo, wow, mamá. Hermana, oh, mamá, eres inteligente. Papá dijo, me casé con una mujer inteligente. Los hermanos dijeron, ¡ew! Y cuando llegaron a la casa, mamá dijo a los niños una cosa muy importante y yo quiero decirles a ustedes también. Es muy importante hablar dos idiomas. When I tell that story in Spanish, the people get the joke at the end of it. And I'll just very quickly share with you. The family of mice went on a picnic. And when they were done eating, the brother and sister said, let's go play a game, Mama and Papa. They said, nah, we want to stay here and smooch. So the brother and sister go running and they play soccer and tag and close your eyes and spin around until you fall over. And then they ran across the field where on the other side of a fence, they saw el gato. And they didn't think the cat could jump over that fence, but sure enough. And so they ran back as fast as they could to their parents, where Mama and Papa were still smooching. They said, stop smooching. The cat is going to eat us. Papa said, I'm not scared of that cat. I've got big muscles. My dad was always talking about how big his muscles were. When I was about 20 years old, my muscles were finally bigger than my dad's. But then when he sees the cat, Papa gets scared and he jumps behind Mama. Brother and sister go behind mama too. And I love this line, Jerry. I rewrote this page a lot of times. And when, with the courage a mother feels when her family is threatened, mama stood on her hind paws and looked right into the great green eyes of that cat. And she said, Papa said, I knew I married the right woman. And when they got home nice and safe, Mama said to her kids, you see, kids, it pays to speak another language. Es muy importante hablar otro idioma.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, so that was your first book, right?
That was my first book, yes.
Now, when it came out, yeah, I would assume you didn't work with the illustrator, did you?
No, I didn't. Yeah, so they sent it.
So all of a sudden it came out.
Yes.
It looks beautiful. It looks
Thank you.
beautiful. Did you feel that way when you got
I
it?
did. Thank you. It was published by Albert Whitman and Company, and they wrote the boxcar. They published the Boxcar Children's series in the 40s. So they were the only publisher to take a chance with me. I didn't have an agent. I had no, when you send out to publishers as a publisher, never been published before, they want to know what you've had before, who your agent is, who, this is all pre-social media. So I couldn't say I have this many followers, So yeah, when as a matter of fact, so when I finally got the call from the publisher, I called Juan Felipe Herrera. He's this wonderful, wonderful man. He's a poet and a children's author and a professor. And I said, I got a deal. He said, oh, that's amazing. He says, this is what you do. You ask for this much money for an advance. You ask for this much money as a residual, and you want to make sure you have some say in the illustrations. I said, okay, good. So I called him back. I'm like, this is what I want. Like, you're not getting it. And I said, okay, whatever you want, whatever you got is good with me. And I called Juan. I thought he'd be upset. He said, nope, that's exactly right. In the next book, you can ask for more. So each child.
We had Marianne Coca Lefflo on last week.
Yeah,
and she was with Whitman.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
they're doing nice work. Yeah. So for me, did you ever say with the illustrators in some of your books, or all, or none, or what's that like?
I'm a freak of nature. I started out self-published, so I hired the illustrators myself, and I worked with them, and I pretty much designed all my books.
Yeah.
And the illustrator and I would sit next to each other and sort of decide which way the book would go,
That's pretty great.
And then even when I got to a big publisher, they said, hey, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. They let us keep doing it. So I was a lucky guy. A few of my books, though, I had nothing to do with it, and I was a little scared at first, but they came out beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw my book, Who Will Plant a Tree? The illustrator, the book designer did just a beautiful job.
Yeah.
And F is for Fenway. They did a great job on that book. And let me think of what other book. There was another one I had nothing to do with it. Oh yeah, A Giraffe Did One. Did you ever see the book A Giraffe Did One? You could have your daughter read it with me online, because it's online somewhere on my website. It's called A Giraffe Did One.
Okay. All right. We'll look it up today.
Yeah, she might really like that. It's a cute book. But I had nothing to do with it. But the lady who illustrated did just a beautiful job. Yeah.
The second book that came out was illustrated by Angela Dominguez, and she's gotten pretty famous as an author as well. So that was a good break for me, because this was with Abrams. This is after Abrams was sitting on all that Diary of a Wimpy Kid money. So again, they took a chance on a new publisher, on a new author, and a new illustrator. And so
that's a serious publisher.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful book as well. I never had an aesthetic. It's funny. One of the things I do is I do share my drawings, because drawings are important for me at the early part of my process, but they're just stick figures. I just draw stick figures, and that's how I exist in the illustration world. So whenever they send me illustrations, I'm so amazed that they made anything that doesn't look like a stick figure, that I love them. So, but I have three different styles. I have a very realistic style, a cartoonish style, and then like this sort of hybrid of the both, which is really great. And the next book coming out is very beautifully illustrated by a woman who has a mixture of Filipino and Latino. And so the mix of the cultures is just a part of who I am. And when my illustrators reflect that as well, that's been really fun. The Barky Mouse illustrators from Mexico, One of the illustrators is from Spain, so it's been really fun to meet them. I never met them in person, but to see their stuff and to see the books come out, it's been a great joy.
What was I going to tell you? I had maybe 10 or 15 books at the time, and they called me up and they said, we're going to turn one of your books into, we're going to translate one of your books into Spanish. So I'll tell you my Spanish story. Naturally, I couldn't translate it into Spanish and have all the nuances of the language and all that sort of stuff. So the book, my best-selling book at the time was Icky Bug Alphabet.
Yeah.
But if you take a bug, like say a butterfly, in Spanish, it's not mariposa.
Butterfly, mariposa is how we would say it. Yeah.
Yeah, mariposa. Mm-hmm. So like my B page, in other words, it's M. Like if you took my bug book, you translated it, it'd be like 5 M's, 2 J, like, you know what I mean? Like you can't really translate it.
Right.
And that book.
Yeah.
So they decided it was too difficult to translate the alphabet books and make them look good. So they took my counting book and they said, we're gonna translate your counting book. Okay. So then there was a fight over, do you call it insectos? Icky insectos.
Oh yeah. Oh cool.
Icky, like English slang, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah.
So is there a Spanish slang for icky? So there was a big fight in the publisher over whether to call it icky insectos. Well, how would you say bug? Like a bug?
I would say, yeah, it's funny. I would say insecto. Yeah, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, my Spanish speaking people couldn't pronounce bug very well. Bug. So insecto. Yeah, we'd say insecto.
Oh yeah. So it went back and forth. Eventually they settled on Cuenta los insectos. Oh. So I lost like the playfulness of icky. Like they really think of like what how to replace that. But the book looks beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Show me another one.
Well, I did see a question here. There's a man named Craig Schroeder. It looks like he's from Mexico. Is joining us live. Oh yeah, que viva Mexico. He's asking this, Jerry. It's interesting. Kindle publishing helping. Do you see Kindle publishing helping aspiring? Oh, Craig is from Nebraska, but Mexico is joining. You know what, Craig? This is funny. So my father can't pronounce a lot of different words in English. So Craig is a diphthong in English that is almost impossible for native Spanish speakers to pronounce. So I have a dear friend named Craig from Denver, actually. And my dad says, how is Craig doing? How is Craig? Nope, Dad, it's Craig. Craig, he can't say it. Craig is from Nebraska, but aquí veo que México está ahora con nosotros también. Craig asked, does Kindle
Yeah, go ahead.
You read that, Terry. Go ahead.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, it's your show,
You
Jerry.
see Kindle publishing helping more aspiring young authors to be published in the future. I don't know how to answer. I don't know the answer to that. This is how I feel for anyone out there who wants to write a book. If you have a creative, beautiful idea, it will get published. And if you have an idea that's been done 1,000 times, it might not get published, So that's how I really feel. If someone has a really creative idea, it will get published. Kindle, I assume is that Barnes and Noble, Kindle publishing? So I don't know if they're into I don't know anything about them right now. So
I would say this to Craig as well. It's interesting you said that, Jerry. I feel like I've been using an analogy of sports. I grew up loving sports. I'm a Red Sox fan, just memories of watching with all my Boston family. And, how many times does a guy have to strike out? How many times does he miss the ball, right? So a 300 hitter is an all-star. He's missing 70% of the time. Right. So what happens, what I see happening with a lot of young authors is they have one idea that they think is great, and it might be great, but they don't send it, they're not sitting on 100 rejections. If it's a good idea, it's going to get published, but it's got to get out there. So part of publishing is being rejected and also coming up with the next ideas. I mean, Jerry, you have 3 or 4 different series of books, not just, you probably, I don't know, maybe you could have sat on your laurels from the Bugs books or the Who Would Win books, but you're constantly pushing yourself as a writer. So I think
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is, a friend of mine says, I don't, actually, his name's Roland Smith, the novelist Roland Smith. He
Just
says,
name
I don't,
dropping, Jerry. Just dropping names left and right.
Roland says, I don't write books, I finish them.
Oh,
You know how a lot of people write books, they think of books and then they think they have a really cool idea, but they never actually
yeah,
finish them.
that's
So
very,
someone said that to me one day. I don't write books, I finish them. And I was like, whoa.
love
At
that.
first I thought it was a really mean thing to say, but then I thought it really makes sense. You got to finish them and then you got to
You know
send them,
what?
you know?
Very much so. And that leads directly into one of the biggest problems that teachers have teaching writing to kids that I'm finding is that kids don't want to rewrite. They want to get the idea out and then it's done. And they don't think that there's any more work that needs to be done.
By
And
the
I know,
way, I've seen Pam Ryan speak to teachers and she always says, I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter. How do you like that one? I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter.
I love
That is,
both of those things. I don't write books, I finish them, and I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter. I think that both of those are just incredible. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yep. So, well, since it's your day, why don't you tell us your favorite story you love to tell?
Oh, that's so sweet of you. The Barky Mouse story is a story I love to tell. There's a little story I want to tell for there's a friend of mine named Jim May, and Jerry, he's an author too, but I met him as a storyteller. He heard this from somebody else. He told me, and I'm going to share it, and hopefully he'll get to tell it live. This is for every person who teaches young people. Here's Mr. Wiggle. Here's Mr. Waggle. They're best friends. They live on the other side of a huge mountain. So one day, Mr. Wiggle goes out of his house. He opens his door, pop, goes outside, pop, closes the door, pop, and he walks up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down and gets to the house of his friend, Mr. Waggle, and knocks on the door. One more time. One more time, one more time. Nobody home. So he goes up and down and up and down and up and down, opens his door, goes inside, pop, closes the door, pop. The next day, Mr. Waggle wants to visit Mr. Wiggle because they're best friends. So he opens his door, pop, goes outside, pop, closes the door, pop, and he goes up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And now one thing is that when I tell stories to young kids, if it's funny once, it's funny 38 more times. So you just keep doing it. But also the repetition of the language when I'm teaching two languages, subió y bajó, subió y bajó, subió y bajó. If a kid is learning Spanish, she hears that 30 times in the story. So by the end of the story, hopefully she knows subió y bajó y llamó a la puerta. Nadie estuvo en la puerta. Y tenía que regresar a la casa. Y subió y bajó, y subió y bajó, y subió y bajó. Y abrió la puerta, pa. Entró en la casa, pa. Y cerró la puerta, pa. The next day, both Mr. Wiggle and Mr. Waggle decided to visit each other simultaneously. Simultaneously. That means at the exact same time. Y abrieron la puerta, pa. Salieron afuera, pa. Cerraron la puerta, pa. Y empezaron a subir y bajar, y subir y bajar, y subir. Y hablaron, y hablaron, y hablaron, y hablaron, y hablaron, y hablaron, y hablaron. And they talked, 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 and they talked. Now, if you're really young, or Jerry, you just keep doing this because you just keep getting laughs. And they talked, and they talked, and they talked, and they talked, until they were all talked out. So they gave each other a hug because they were best friends. Y subieron, y bajaron, y subió, y bajó, y subió, y abrieron la puerta, entraron, cerraron la puerta. And that night they said, "Good night, Mr. Wiggle. Good night, Mr. Waggle." That's a little finger play story for my friend Jim May. And yeah, if you don't know his work, you should have him on your story. He has a book called The Boo Baby Girl, which is his beautiful book about a girl facing some scariness, and she does a great job with it. And that's that story. That's the story I end with for 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, with blessings from my friend Jim.
Yeah, excellent. I've never heard that story.
Yeah, it's kind of an old famous story. There's a question here from Susan Hutchins. Do I find it hard to translate my verbal stories into written form? Susan, that's a really interesting question because, as you can tell, my facial expressions and my body gestures and the way I use my voice is an integral part of how I tell stories. So when I talk with my agent about my book ideas, she almost always says, "Oh, I can see how that really works live." which means it's not working on the page right now. So yes, it's a big battle for me. So I try to figure out how the illustrator can help make some of these things come out, make some of the humor come out. And that's a little bit of shorthand, which is good, but to get to the point where an illustrator is going to illustrate it, it really is a lot of, back to Pam's point, a lot of rewriting so that that humor and that sort of those moments jump off of the page.
Very good. Excellent. By the way, this came to me, this Spanish Who Would Win book. So kids out there, the Who Would Win books are in Spanish and they are in Mandarin Chinese, I think. So what is the actual translation of that, Antonio?
So yeah, ¿Quién ganará? Who will win? Who will win? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, but we would know what that is. Yeah, who would win or who will win? Yeah.
That's what that means right there?
Yes.
Then how would you say that? Gloton?
Gloton. You know what? Demonio de Tasmania. I don't know what a gloton is. So I just want to model as a dual language learner. I would look at the picture and try to figure out what gloton is. Jerry, could you show me the picture? Because I would need to go to a Spanish dictionary. Gloton. Okay, there's a gloton. And Tasmania. Oh, you know what? Maybe a gloton is a weasel, but I'm not sure. Am I right, Jerry?
It's from the weasel family, but it's a wolverine.
A wolverine. Okay, so
I'm pretty sure its scientific name is gloton.
I'm sure that that's the case. So gloton, it's funny because the word gloton means somebody who eats a lot. So Alain,
yeah, glutton. You're right, yes. Glutton. That's where he got his name. So you're right. I forgot about that part of the story, that his name, let me see if I got it right here. Well, it means, how about that? Gulo. Oops, sorry.
El glotón. Oh, gulo. Nombre científico. Gulo. You know what? I don't know what gulo means, but maybe it's like gulp or something. I'm not sure. Again, like what I would do is I would call my dad and I would ask him. As a matter of fact, I talk to him almost every day. I'll say, Papa, ¿qué quiere decir gulo? What does gulo mean? And then we'll have a big discussion because some of these words mean different.
That might be Latin or it might be Greek.
It might be.
Because they use.
Yeah, the different Spanish-speaking cultures, we have different words for different things, actually. So that's an interesting barrier to translating books in Spanish.
I'll make you do. I'll make you. So, kids, these are in the book, the Who Would Win books. Antonio, I'll make you translate that. Ready?
Apodos, nicknames: Zorrillo, Gato Sucio, Gato de Montaña, Carcacoyu. Oh my gosh, that's perfect. These are all the nicknames. Little Skunk.
Apodos means nickname.
Yeah, Apodos means nickname. So Jerry, Apodos, we got Skunk, Dirty Cat from the mountain, and the Carcayu. I don't know what Carcayu means, but I love it. Carcayu. So that's so great. That totally makes sense to me.
And Cat of the Mountain, I guess.
Yeah, Cat of the Mountain.
Cat of the Mountain. Zorillo is a skunk.
That's funny.
Zorillo. Awesome. Hey, that's great.
I wanted to say that I am starting to read. So Jerry, I'm serious. You got to send me that book and I'm going to read it for my Spanish Read Aloud channel on my YouTube channel. So my daughter and I, she's 7 years old, second grade. We've been practicing reading aloud in Spanish and I'm just recording them on YouTube and you get to see some well-known books that are in a lot of dual language classrooms. And Jerry, as soon as I get your book, we'll put it up on the channel as well. And we just read the book entirely in Spanish. We talk about it, and so that's one of the things I'm offering to families, just as specifically in dual language programs.
That's great, and I'll put it on mine also.
Awesome.
Someone says, "Can you share that channel?" So what would it be? Antonio Sacre.
Yeah, if you go to YouTube and just Google in my name, which is
Antonio Sacre, read books in Spanish.
Yeah, if you go to YouTube and you type in my name, Antonio Sacre, you'll see, I don't know, I've got a couple hundred videos. They're mostly just schools putting videos of me performing at the schools, but there's a channel there called Read Aloud Books. And there's about 7 or 8 books there. We just did the Olivia book by Ian Falconer. And all of these are with permission from the publishers while the crisis is going on. Once the crisis is done, I'm going to take the channel down and do something else. But yeah, that's that. Another resource I wanted to give for families is you can go to my website, but if you go to Bandcamp, I'll put this down for the people there too. all of my storytelling albums are streaming for free on Bandcamp. So if you go to Bandcamp and you type in my name, Antonio Sacre, you can listen to. I have 6.
BANCAMP?
Yeah, Bandcamp, and yeah, they're all MP3. Well, actually, you just listen to it streaming live on the site.
BANCAMP?
Yes, that's right. Bandcamp is the name of this thing. My assistant helped me find it, and it's just a way that people can hear all my stories for
Wow,
free.
that's great.
And there's 6 albums of stories that I recorded in the studio. This is part of the tool of the storyteller. You know, we had these. They used to be cassettes, Jerry. I had a bunch of cassettes. Then I had CDs. Now they're just out there. But the latest album I love, and you can listen to it for free on Bandcamp. If you want to own it, you can get it on iTunes, and it's called The World's Second Best Dad. My kids have been helping me learn that I'm not the world's best dad. If I was the world's best dad, I would take them to Target and we'd buy candy, and I wouldn't make them brush their teeth every night. But there's some fun stories of hijinks of trying to be a dad of these 2 kids. So that's my latest.
I misread the clock. I thought it said 11:30. It's actually 11:40.
Wrap it up, Jerry. I got things to do, guy. Come on.
Antonio, this was a fabulous visit. I can't thank you enough. It's such a joy to hang out with you. You know,
Jerry, I love seeing you whenever you come out to California, and I can't wait till we can get a big hug on the Malibu Pier and drink a green kale smoothie shake.
That's right. I can't wait to go back there. Hey, thank you, everybody. And thank you. By the way, his website is Antonio Sacre, SACRE, AntonioSacre.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. And you can get all links.
JerryPallotta.com, JerryPallotta.com. Thank you, everybody, for having us. Thank you for sharing all your talents, Antonio. In our secret weapons in the background, Jamie and Mary Alice. Thank you, everybody. See you later. We'll talk soon.